Welcome to another DragonLance Saga episode. It is Misham Fierce Welt the 8th. My name is Adam, and today I'm going to give you my spoiler review of the Annotated Chronicles Dragons of Spring Dawning. I will be spoiling the story, so if you don't want to know it, stop watching now. I'd like to take a moment and thank my collaborator patrons at Heroes of the Lance and invite you to consider becoming a patron or member of this channel by visiting the links in the description below. You can even pick up DragonLance gaming materials using my affiliate link. Now, this is my perspective only, and if you have any thoughts or disagree with mine, I invite you to share them in chat, like Thomas. I hope you're going to share your ideas there. How you doing? Thanks for joining the live chat. Now, I'm going to dive into this pre-written review, and then on the other side of it, any thoughts or comments you throw up in the chat, we can just sort of bounce back and forth and just talk for a little bit about this novel, which is actually really fantastic. And the annotated version, I believe, is even a little bit more so. I'll get into that in a second. But let's go ahead and start with the review, and on the other side, we'll chat. The beginning of the novel provides the story of Berem Everman, the green gemstone man, and his sister Jasla. He was out hunting with his sister and came across a column with gems in it. He insisted on prying one out to sell, and his sister, out of fear, tried to stop him. He accidentally murdered her, and the gem became embedded magically into his chest, giving him seemingly eternal life. This is the beginning of the temple and the last piece needed for Takhisis to enter into Krynn, so you can imagine her desire to find him. This also sets up Kitiara's reason for being in Flotsam rather than Solamnia. It also connects Tanis with Kitiara and dooms the companions ultimately, as Tanis succumbs to her physically in a wonderful boot scene that is explained by Tracy Hickman in the annotations. You see, he preferred inferring sex scenes rather than actively describing them. And he always reflected on Captain Kirk in the Star Trek TV series he watched as a kid, where he would always put on his boots after an alien encounter. Kit and Tanis took each other's boots off before their own, and Kit is convinced at least marginally of Tanis's desire to switch to the Dark Queen's army and ends up leaving town for a bit. Tanis listens to his conscience, finally, and leaves her to return to his friends. Now, Kit told him about her search of the Everman and his importance, and Tanis realized that he saw him again on the ship when he booked passage out of Flotsam, realizing he's got to leave immediately. Now he convinces his concerned companions to leave, and they see his torment from hiding something. They convince Marquesta to leave, and they're chased by Kitiara and Ski into the Blood Sea Maelstrom. Raceland uses the Dragon Orb to escape, devastating Karaman, and Kit nearly captures Berem before the sinking of the Perishin, the ship. We travel to Palanthas, where Raceland transported himself to and lies at its steps, nearly dead. Bertram informs Astenus and conveys Raceland's request to meet with him. They bring Raceland inside the library for care, and Astenus reveals that there's something else within Raceland's eyes that he recognizes. Raceland asks to peruse the library as he secretly wants to gain more power. Astenus consents, and Raceland nearly dies in his pursuits. Ultimately, he realizes that he's sharing his body with someone else. He recalls his test and understands that Fistandantilus is sharing his body and life essence, causing him the suffering and granting him power in return. Now, we go back to Laurana, who's still mourning Sturm, but fulfilling her duty to Lord Gunther. In the message Gunther sends to the Palanthas leader, who reads it out loud to Laurana and Astenus, Lord Gunther Uthwistan promises Lorlanthalassa promotes her to general of the Salamnic Knights. As the knights complain that it's against the measure, Astenus says that there was a female commander in the Third Dragon War who was accepted into the Knights of Solamnia after her father and brothers died, she rose to the Knight of the Sword and died honorably in battle. Now, Tracy Hickman mentions that the story needs retelling and is being researched in an annotation. I find this very interesting because ultimately, I want to read that story. Now, Laurana is placed in control of Palanthas' defenses as well and their standing army, and is overcome with the burden but ultimately steps up to the task. When standing guard, Flint and Tasselhoff witness dragons approaching the city from a distance and warn others. The townspeople flock to the streets to share in the news and their terror. Laurana takes the city guard to calm the people, and Tasselhoff Bergfoot recognizes the dragons from the tapestry in Pax Tharkaz and the Tomb of Huma as being good dragons. Upon Flint seeing them, his eyes grow misty due to their portent of the tide of the war finally changing. And you have to remember, up until this point, it was devastating. There's no possible way they were going to win this battle. But this sign of the dragons returning is the first opportunity they have of even seeking hope. Now, we see Laurana leading the dragon riders in battle against an oncoming dragon High Lord army through the perspective of Firestrike, Flint, and Taz. And this is a fantastic moment to read, as Taz's excitement is juxtaposed by Flint's terror and the reality of dragon flight. I recalled playing the 3D Dragonflight game Dragon Strike just a month ago and understanding their terror, excitement, and difficulty. They attack a blue dragon and rider, and Taz inadvertently captures the rider by wrapping around the dragon rider's head like a, quote, six-legged bug. I laughed out loud during this entire event until we see Flint's heart is going out as he suffers what appears to be a minor heart attack due to the excitement. This is the end of the first book and presents us with the first true glimpse of hope. I danced past Gilthana's explaining how he and Silvera snuck into Sanction and was tortured by Lord Ericas, before being helped by a secret agent to escape. This does not line up exactly with the adventure game book, Lords of Doom, but it does connect to Dragons of the Hourglass Mage if Iolanthe is the secret assistance they gain. Now, there was another annotation of note by Douglas Niles, who was writing the module to this section, and shared how he took the World War II approach of planes assaulting ships at sea and troops on land for his portrayal of dragons fighting. It seems appropriate in hindsight, I just never had considered it before, so it was a nice little note. In Book 2, Kitiara is nearly killed by Lord Ericas until Lord Soth intervenes, and there is an uncomfortable moment when we realize the Lost Chronicles were written long after this book, but the authors never went back to check continuity, as in Dragons of the Hourglass Mage, Takhisis is sending all the High Lords dreams of Lord Soth, asking them to get him to join her war. But in this book, Lord Ericas is surprised and forgot who Lord Soth was. It immediately takes you out of the book and makes you disappointed with the authors. She shares her idea about using the Flying Citadels and Laurana to recapture Solamnia, banish the good dragons, and collect Berem the Everman. We then pick up with Laurana being delivered a note from Kitiara through a loyal Draconian in Tasselhoff. It said that Tanis was dying and wanted to see Laurana before it was all over. She was to come alone outside Dergard Keep, but if she desired, she could bring Flint and Taz. Everyone knew this was a trap, even Laurana expects as much, but if it is true and Tanis is sick, she must go to him. Her love for Tanis makes her forsake her duty and abandon her post. In an annotation, Margaret explains that she was against this idea from the start, but that Tracy insisted. Tracy followed it with an annotation saying that he admits that he was wrong and Laurana should not have chased after Tanis, as it was an abusive love and women should never run towards abusers. This is a difficult idea for me to swallow because I never saw how Tanis was abusive in his past and how he's torn between the two women. He does actually love Laurana. This is what humanized him and makes him interesting as a character, albeit a terrible person to be connected to romantically or sexually. She is to deliver Kitiara's captured commander in return for Tanis, and she goes through with the act. Sneaking him out of prison, he discovers Kitiara's plan and sees right through it as being a deception and trap. He actually turns the tables on the three of them and nearly sexually assaults Laurana, if it wasn't for Taz murdering him just before the act. Then Lord Soth appears and takes Laurana. Kitiara tells Flint and Taz to deliver her message to Calumet to be prepared to surrender in 3 days. We switch to the drowned companions in the Red Sea, who meet a red-robed wizard named Zabula, who is living in the drowned city of Istar with his love, a Demurnisty elf. She eventually assists the companions to leave after Tanis explains the reality of the war being waged on land and in the air, clearly stating that the sea is next. There's a wonderful annotation about Karaman, how he's simple, but he likes to add humor in any given situation if possible. In his youth, he would play shadow puppets for Raceland, who was often ill, and when they were writing the original end of Dragons of Autumn Twilight, which lined up with the modules, having Verminard and a fire dragon attack the companions in Thorbarden, they asked what Caramon would do. Michael Williams said, well, he'd make shadow puppets against the cave walls, and everyone had a huge laugh. Now, the companions arrive in Calaman with the aid of the Sea Elf Maiden, and forget about the experience thanks to a forgetfulness spell from Zabola. They travel into the city, which is mourning the loss of the Golden General, but the companions have no idea who that is. Pardon. They meet Taz after he pickpockets them and learns the whole story about Icewall, Whitestone, the Dragon Orb, the High Clares Tower, and Sturm's death. This made me very sad all over again, having to live through it vicariously through Tanis. There were such dear, lifelong friends that my already exposed nerves became overwhelmed yet again. Then Laurana was asked about, Tanis asked about Laurana, and when he found out, he kind of lost it. Then Kitiara arrives to make her demands for surrender. They have 3 weeks to send the good dragons to Sanction, find and deliver the Everman, and surrender Calaman. To put a fine point on it, flying citadels with dragons arrive to just watch over the city. Now, Tanis and a few other companions leave with Berem to Naraka to rescue Laurana. Gilthanas stays to command the Calaman forces. Riverwind and Goldmoon stay to assist, while the others sneak out on Dragonback in the middle of the night. This opens Book 3 with Fizban snoozing on an ancient gold dragon. He wakes to see the heroes flying low over him on their brass dragon and chases them down, attacking them and grounding them with his dragon. Furious, Tanis confronts Fizban, and they realize that they can't do anything about it, as Fizban dismissed all the dragons and had his gold dragon transform into an idol. Taz puts it in his pouch. They drew the attention of multiple companies of Draconians in the process, and they run for their lives. They come across an ancient bridge that begins to collapse as they pass over it, and Fizban casts a spell that saves them by making a platform. They're traveling to Naraka and find themselves getting very close to God's home. Berem vanishes, and Flint goes in hot pursuit. Berem stumbles his way into God's home, and the heroes follow. Flint has a heart attack, and Berem returns to help him as Tanis runs up on him and murders Berem for seemingly attacking Flint. This scene gets me every damn time. Even after all the allusions to it through the Chronicles and the Lost Chronicles, I know what it feels like to lose a close friend. I know the pain that grips your heart, making it difficult to breathe and comprehend what's happening. How sorrow fills you to the point of pain. Because of this, I can empathize with Tanis and Tasselhoff and the heroes, especially Tanis and Tasselhoff. It is a devastating moment, especially when Flint realizes who Fizban is and asks him to join him in the first part of his journey to the next life. Now, I do not believe in an afterlife. I like the idea of one, though. Love, friendship, and connection to other humans, in my opinion, is true magic. And to have that come to an abrupt and nonsensical end because of death sucks. In Dragonlance, there's not an end to that connection, and to see Tanis with his agnostic mind chasing after Fizban, who's carrying Flint, is yet another moment of devastation. The way I see it, the ritual of a funeral is so incredibly important to the human experience for closure. And for Tanis, not being able to honor his adopted father and friend, even as he realizes the truth of who Fizban is a painful reality he must reconcile amidst everything else happening around him. Tracy would write in an annotation that they wanted to show how heroes don't always die in heroic ways. The life they lived is what made them heroes, but sometimes those you love simply die. I'm still processing how I feel about that action and statement, even though it is firmly planted in reality. They all travel to Naraka with the plan of infiltrating the temple, finding and freeing Laurana, and escaping. This eventually happens, though not as planned. Ultimately, Tanis has to offer Kitiara his life and service in trade for Laurana's freedom, and Kitiara uses it as leverage to continue her existing plan. She wants the crown of power that Lord Ericus has and is leveraging Laurana to gain it. Tanis commits himself to the Dark Queen and goes to lay his sword down at Ericus' feet when Raistlin tells him to strike and he will help him. Tanis follows through and kills Ericus. The crown of power is being sought by Lord Soth for Kitiara, and Tanis dons it. He moves to Kit, escorting by Soth, and Laurana uses the moment to break free, telling Tanis she doesn't need him to save her. This is a huge and inconsistent moment, in my opinion. Now, Laurana forsook her role and responsibility with the Knights of Solamnia and Calaman to chase after Tanis. Again, because she is hopelessly in love with him and will do literally anything for him. Now, just days later, she can't stand him? Give me a break. He is doing a purely selfless act to save her life, and she couldn't seem to give a shit. She knocks Kit back, knocks Tanis to the floor, and all hell breaks loose. Everyone is after the crown of power, and evil is killing itself. Meanwhile, Caramon escaped imprisonment with Everman and chasing after him finds himself at the original archway to the portal Berem's sister's soul is guarding. Raistlin's alarm goes off and he confronts them both. This is Raistlin's moment to shine. Not only does he make it painfully clear that he's in total control of everything happening, he's the only one, that allows Berem to join his sister's soul and banish the Queen of Darkness. He shows Caramon that he doesn't need him at all. At the same time, Tika and Taz are trying to divert the Draconians' attention from Caramon and Berem and run up onto the locked door. Run out into a locked door. Taz tries to pick it and trips the poison needle trap. As he's dying, he turns to see Tika fallen already from Draconian attack. The shadow of the nightmare in Sylvanesty hovers over everyone. Caramon pleads with Raistlin to help, and ultimately, Raistlin pays back everyone that helped him in the past by saving their lives. Tanis chased after Laurana, and when he finally catches up with her, Kitiara joins them, and we're presented with the point of this entire trilogy. Good, neutrality, and evil, all fighting for control. Tanis is the neutral party that has grown to hate his decisions, weaknesses, and desires. The trilogy is about Tanis finding balance within himself, and only after he accepts himself can he be open to love from others. This is echoed in all of our human experiences, and is precisely what draws Laurana and Kitiara to him. In the end, Tanis has chosen Laurana, who accepts him as a close friend with potential for growth. Kitiara lets them leave while making plans for future control of the army and victories as Lord Soth delivers the crown of power to her. Now outside, Raistlin summons Kyan and leaves Caramon, telling him to be his own man. They meet up with Tanis and Fizban, who confirms who he is and how he set the stage for their adventure so long ago. The heroes wait till dawn and all part after an endearing and another tear-shedding scene as Fizban shares Flint's presence near Reorx's forge, waiting for his friend Tasselhoff. This trilogy ends beautifully. It encapsulates how Dragonlance was framed on the pillars of good, evil, and neutrality. This annotated edition delivers insights that were interesting at times and honestly pointless at other times. I do think the good ones outweigh the bad annotations in information, if not quantity, and it's very much worth a read in my opinion. Dragonlance has been influenced by so many people, from artists, writers, game designers, and fans, that to hear the authors share their love for them all makes me love it that much more. I will always stand by my last claim about my favorite Dragonlance book being the last one that I read, and in this case, I cannot imagine anything beating the Annotated Chronicles. That is until I start the Annotated Legends next. Okay, so that was my review. I threw a whole lot of information at you, so let's see what you guys have been saying here. You only read the first 6 Dragonlance books after waiting a decade for them, like The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings back in the day. I will tell you this, Thomas. I was listening to the Dragonlance Nexus interview of Larry Elmore. This is part 2 that he says this in. And Larry Elmore was saying that in the day when Margaret Weis and Tracy Hickman finished the original Chronicles trilogy, Margaret Weis said, no, that's it. It's a standalone. We told the story. It's done. And then he went back after she finished writing Legends, And she was like, no, that's it. We wrote this story. That's it. It's done. The story's done. It's over. And then they kept writing books and they kept going on. So I guess my inconsistency there is that they wrote the first trilogy, thought it was done, but within the first trilogy is tons of seeds planted for the second trilogy. So I have a hard time believing that after the first trilogy was written, they had no plans for the second trilogy when so many seeds were planted all throughout the Chronicles. So I thought that was a little bit off. But again, the first 6 are the core of what Dragonlance is, for me anyway. You prefer the original cover for this one, Larry Elmore, and your girl Tika for the win. Yeah, I think it's great. I do have to say that Elmore's style improves through the years as you look at this particular artwork on screen of the original painting versus book cover, versus some of his newer pieces. You can definitely see improvement, but it's still great. Save me to save yourself, race in the library with those books. Yeah, he made a deal with Fistendantilus, and he made that deal over and over again. And Fistendantilus, Raceland had him by the balls. And you can argue that it was a two-way streak, but Raceland continuously manipulated Fistendantilus because he was trapped. He had no other option. He's like, either you're going to be sticking me in a dragon orb and trapping me, or you're going to be leaving me somewhere inside of you, and I'm just going to continuously try to take your body over. But he always, he lost control a couple times, but for the most part, to Raceland's credit, he always stayed on top of things. Yeah, the Flint foreshadowing drove me crazy. It was just hammered home at him. Thanks for joining live. Fizban taking him to the heavens was beautiful. Oh, it was beautiful. It makes me wish that stuff was real, like an afterlife, because then at least the loss of the loved ones that you have in life, those that you connect with, at least then there's something, but no, it's all worm food, and that's just life. It's okay. Let's see. There you go. Larry Moore pick. Okay. So, warming his old bones near Rierx's forge, waiting for Tasselhoff. Yeah, that was just brutal. When Fizban told Taz that, the whole time I was just like trying to see through blurry eyes, and it was just brutal. They're really unfair to Laurent on the merits. Her decision really wasn't that unreasonable. She had good reason to believe that Kitiara was an honorable enemy who would respect a truce. I don't think that's true at all. I respect your opinion, but I think that's totally not true at all, based on literally everything, every experience she ever had. The only warrior honor experience that Laurent ever had with Kitiara was when she threw back her lesser dragon lance instead of killing Laurent, and then left and said, I'll let you bury your friend. And I don't know. I just don't think that's enough to think that she would actually trade Tanis, who she knew and feared her entire life that Tanis was cheating on her with. Like, this is a regular theme that has just been eating at Laurana's brain her entire arc from Chronicles book 1 to now. So it just doesn't seem logical that she would suddenly be like, I trust the bad girl. They're really unfair to... Oh, you already said that. Based on the prior encounter in the High Claris Tower where Curie had not attacked her even after chasing her extremely. Yeah, again, I think it's just once and that's not enough. What got you was the dragons bowed to Fizban and the riders didn't notice or think of it. Yeah, and what do you, like, if you're Tanis and you're seeing that, do you think they're bowing to Fizban or do you think they're bowing to the ancient, massive gold dragon? Because it did sort of mention that the brass dragons they were riding were sort of younger and faster. So I assumed that in Tanis's and the other companions' minds, the dragons were obeying or listening or at least showing respect to the massive dragon and not necessarily Fizban, because only Tasselhoff really had any idea about who Fizban was. But you never know. It's not really clear. Let's see. Agnostic, he searched for the gods, Thomas. So, to your point, He searched for the gods, and he constantly claimed that they never found them. Even after the Mishakal, he still questioned whether the gods were even worthwhile. So the reason why I didn't say atheist is because he clearly saw that the gods existed, but for him, they were meaningless to him. He didn't understand why they would let this madness happen. And the text throughout the entire Chronicles is constantly repeating this idea that Tanis just doesn't have any faith in the gods at all. He's constantly questioning whether it's Lorana or whether it's Goldmoon or whether it's Elistan, who just totally disappeared at the beginning of this novel. They just, he was constantly questioning it. And so that's why I labeled him agnostic, not necessarily because he didn't believe the gods existed, just that he didn't believe in their, strength or power or goodness or anything like that, really. You thought she was a badass in that moment where she kicked them all off the tower. I agree with you. It was a great moment for a female character. I just didn't think it was what caused that great moment to happen was a believable event. You saw as her believing in her fully on Kit's side, so she was trying to harden her heart against him and push him away. That's interesting, Echo. Thanks for joining live. That's an interesting take. I want to believe that a little bit more, except for the fact that, he constantly was making the deal audibly with Kitiara, and Lorana was right there. So she knew that he was bargaining himself for her, for her freedom. Like, she could hear them talking about it. So that's why I'm not sure I believe it wholeheartedly. She doesn't know he's doing purely selfless act there. No, she does. She can hear him. He's saying it overtly, out loud. Even when he's bargaining with Kitiara, he's whispering to Kit. See, and I'm not sure he's whispering because she's telling him to shut up because the Dark Queen is like right there. He's like, "You're going against the deal. Lorana's supposed to be free." And she's like, "Be quiet. You're going to ruin everything, Denis." Why did the author make the neutral wizard's red robe instead of gray? Yeah, I'm not sure. Just the gods, huh? I thought I heard her read her say that she didn't know how the twins' story would end before Spring Dawning was even finished. I could have misheard that, though. Tracy Hickman, in the annotations of this book specifically, was saying that he didn't know when they understood, he didn't know when they had planned out, or he couldn't recall when they had planned out the Legends trilogy, but he knew by the final chapter of Dragons of Spring Dawning that it was planned out. So I'm not entirely sure of the minutiae of detail there, but according to the annotation, he said that at the end, they knew that they were going to be doing it. Let's see, Race Quest for Power wasn't finished in the first trilogy. No, you're not. And Legends, first of all, we have to give mad respect because in Chronicles, Raceland was just a shadow of a human being and a magic user. He was effective for third level human, but he was so sickly and just pathetic. He could not survive on his own, hands down, period. And at the end of the trilogy, he is literally the most powerful person. Over any god trying to break through. He's just the most powerful person on the planet in that moment. Fizban probably could have taken him, if we're being honest. But the Dark Queen was sort of trapped, and so she didn't have her full power in order to. And I think even Lord Soth in Legends tips his cap to his power. So again, in Legends he becomes even more powerful. But to his credit, I mean, that's a great character story arc of going from being just pure mouse weakness to just a dragon within himself. Let's see. You much rather fantasy religion over the crap we have to chase from here and now. I agree with you. Red is cooler color than gray. That's before the wizards got. Okay. Let's see. You like 3.5 making Draconians a playable race? Yeah, I don't know. I never played them, so I couldn't say whether or not it ended up being difficult as far as a DM or anything. You ran the Pantheon in a D&D campaign and it totally works. The very 40-year-old simple divide between good and evil was quite refreshing. Yeah, that's what I love about Dragonlance, is that it's this simplified idea, right? It's this simplified universe that, I say simplified because it's as complex as the writers want to make it, and as the players in Dungeons and Dragons want to allow it to be, as real world complex and stuff. But in essence, it's supposed to be good over evil. That's at least Tracy's idea of it. And I find there's something genuinely beautiful that when Laura and Tracy Hickman were traveling from Salt Lake to Wisconsin, ready to, work at TSR for the first time and, ginning up ideas for campaign worlds, they came up with Dragonlance and the idea of Laurana as a symbol of good, Tanis as a symbol of neutrality, and Kidiar as a symbol of evil. And at the very last chapter, the second to last chapter, if you want to be specific, of the final book in the trilogy, you have the three of them meeting, and you see the difficulty of choices for all of them. Kidiara wants to manipulate Tanis as much as she can, but realizes that she just doesn't have the power over him that she wants, even though she's deluding herself thinking she does. Tanis is completely unsure about himself throughout the entire series, and finally gets to a point where he can just accept that he's not always going to make the right choices, but he's going to try. And he's choosing Laurana because she loves him not for what he can give her, like Kidiara, but for who he is. And he's finally ready to accept that. And Laurana, as she says straight to Tanis's face, she loves him because he's not pure good, because he struggles and in the end chooses what she perceives as the right path. And that may not work out in a relationship situation, as we see. It doesn't mean that she genuinely loves him. And there's something beautiful in that, Yeah, I'm with you there, Thomas. I am 100% with you. I actually, sort of foolishly as a kid, I was raised in the Mormon church, and I was rejected outright, and I rejected it, I should say, right after I was baptized at 8 years old. And my parents didn't make me go to the church or anything. So I just sat home and read books and played games and watched, fantasy films. So I connected more with Dragonlance pantheon of deities more than the real world deities that were being taught to me. And in my opinion, they're all fantasy. It's all fiction. It's all myth. But if I had to choose, I would definitely choose the Dragonlance pantheon. It is infinitely more interesting. But that's just my life, who cares? Thank you guys so much. That's really all I had for this review. I appreciate your back and forth. And even if we don't agree, that's okay. We don't have to agree on, minutia of character motivation or design or the reflection on any of the events or anything. What's great about Dragonlance is that there's just enough room for anyone to interpret it essentially any way they really want to. And that's okay. You enjoy it for the way you enjoy it, and I love it the way I love it. And those two can celebrate the campaign together. That's the strength of Dragonlance. Thank you so much, Xylox. Thanks for joining the chat too, by the way. I appreciate it. That is my review for the Annotated Chronicles, Dragons of Spring Dawning. Have you read the annotated version? Did you enjoy the reviews I'm putting out here? Feel free to email me at info@dragonlance-saga.com or leave a comment below. I'd like to once again invite you to consider becoming a patron or member of this channel, and you can pick up Dragonlance gaming materials using my affiliate link. All of that's in the description below. This channel is all about celebrating the wonderful world of the Dragonlance Saga, and I hope you'll join me in the celebration. Thank you so much for watching. This has been Adam with Dragonlance Saga, and until next time, Slán Javar.